Baltimore, Maryland, a city of contradictions, marble steps and boarded-up row houses, crab cakes and corner boys, a place that gave the world Billie Holiday and The Wire. But in April of 2015, Baltimore exploded. A 25-year-old black man named Freddie Gray was arrested, suffered a severed spinal cord in the back of a police van, and died 7 days later. The city burned. Protests filled every block. The National Guard rolled in, and the Baltimore Police Department, already under years of federal scrutiny for brutality and misconduct, was desperate. Desperate to prove it could take back the streets. Desperate for results. What happened next would become one of the most shocking police corruption scandals in American history. In the chaos that followed the Freddie Gray uprising, Police Commissioner Anthony Batts needed numbers, gun seizures, arrests, stats he could put on a press release. And so the Gun Trace Task Force was elevated, a plainclothes unit given special authority, special discretion, and almost no oversight. They drove unmarked cars. They wore hoodies and jeans instead of uniforms. They operated in the shadows between police work and street crime. Their mandate was simple: get guns off the street by any means necessary. Their commanders asked few questions. Nobody was watching. And in Baltimore, when nobody is watching, everything goes wrong. At the center of everything was Sergeant Wayne Jenkins. By every official measure, Jenkins was a superstar. He made more gun seizures than almost anyone in the department. He was aggressive, relentless, and charismatic. Officers competed to work for him. Commanders wrote him glowing evaluations. He was the kind of cop police departments put on recruiting posters. But the people of Baltimore's West Side, the drug dealers, the innocent bystanders, the ordinary people Jenkins was supposed to be protecting, they knew a different Wayne Jenkins. They knew a man who would pull up in an unmarked car, throw you against a wall, go through your pockets, take whatever cash you had, and drive away. No arrest, no report, just gone. Jenkins had been doing it for years. He was just waiting for the right crew. Jenkins assembled his crew carefully. There were 8 officers in total. Mamodu Gondo, who had a dangerous side arrangement. He was already working as an informant for a drug trafficking organization, feeding them intelligence on police operations. Jamel Rayam, who would eventually admit in court to committing a murder for hire. Daniel Hersel, a cop with so many brutality complaints that the city had paid out hundreds of thousands in settlements on his behalf, and who was still on the force. Marcus Taylor, Maurice Ward, Evodio Hendricks, Ryan Ginn. Together they weren't a task force. They were a criminal organization wearing police badges, operating in broad daylight, protected by the institution they were robbing from the inside. The scheme was brutally simple, and it worked because the victims couldn't fight back. Jenkins and his crew would identify drug dealers, people who kept large amounts of untraceable cash and who had no avenue to report a crime without incriminating themselves. They would pull up in their unmarked cars, flash their badges, and conduct what they called a search. Then the cash would vanish. Sometimes $10,000, sometimes $40,000, sometimes more. No voucher filed, no evidence log, straight into their pockets. And if the target went to the police to complain, nobody was going to take the word of a drug dealer over 8 Baltimore officers. The victims had no voice. Jenkins knew exactly how to exploit that. The robberies were only one part of the operation. The Gun Trace Task Force also planted evidence on a regular basis. Officers carried BB guns, replica firearms nearly indistinguishable from the real thing, and would place them on suspects who had no weapons. They kept drugs in their vehicles for the same purpose. One of their favorite techniques was what would later be called the pop and run. Officers would activate their body cameras, walk out of frame, plant the evidence, then walk back and discover it on camera. What they didn't know was that those cameras had a 30-second buffer. They recorded 30 seconds before the officer hit record. Prosecutors would later find footage showing officers carefully placing BB guns near suspects' bodies before turning around and discovering them. Innocent people. Some of them teenagers. They went to state prison because of these men. Beyond the robberies and frame-ups, the crew ran a separate scheme that was almost comically brazen. Fake overtime. Officers submitted timesheets claiming they were actively working police operations when they were at home, at the gym, picking up their kids, or on vacation. Over several years, the 8 members of the gun trace task force collectively stole over $500,000 in fraudulent overtime pay. Wayne Jenkins alone claimed to work shifts so long, so relentless, that it would have been physically impossible to sustain. Records placed him nowhere near Baltimore on days he claimed to be conducting surveillance. The city paid every invoice without question because nobody was auditing, nobody was checking, and in a department stretched thin and starved for oversight, that was completely normal. Then there is the darkest chapter in this story. In November 2016, a 20-year-old man named Keontae Savage was shot and killed on a Baltimore street. His family believed from the beginning that Wayne Jenkins was connected. Federal investigators later developed information suggesting Jenkins had been present during events tied to Savage's death, that the shooting may have been connected to a drug robbery gone wrong, and that Savage was killed to prevent him from talking. Jenkins was investigated. He was cleared by the department, but the FBI was not finished. Witnesses came forward. The allegation was never fully resolved. Jenkins was never charged with murder. But for the families who lost Keontae Savage, the question never went away. Did the leader of the gun trace task force have blood on his hands beyond a badge? By 2016, the crew had stopped being careful. They robbed a man named Ronald Hamilton in his own home, walked through the door with their badges out, and walked away with $50,000 in cash. They broke into another man's house using a fraudulent search warrant, found $200,000 hidden inside, and kept the overwhelming majority of it. Jenkins texted photos of stacked cash to friends before it disappeared. In another case, they enlisted a private tow truck driver to help them access and rob vehicles. The operations were getting bigger, sloppier, and more audacious. Jenkins told his crew they were untouchable. In Baltimore, with the department they worked for, he had reason to believe it. The FBI was about to prove him wrong. The federal investigation began with a thread. FBI agents in Baltimore's Public Corruption Unit started receiving complaints, dealers and civilians describing cash disappearing during police encounters, arrests that ended with no charges and empty pockets, tips that pointed to the same unit, the same names. Then they caught a break. Momodu Gondo was already connected to a drug trafficking network the FBI had under surveillance. Wiretaps on that case began picking up something extraordinary. A Baltimore police officer openly discussing criminal operations on recorded calls. The FBI pulled that thread. It unraveled all the way. By early 2017, federal wiretaps were active on most of the crew. Agents listened as officers planned robberies, divided stolen money, and coordinated cover stories. They had everything they needed. March 1st, 2017. Federal agents moved simultaneously across Baltimore. 7 members of the gun trace task force were taken into custody. Wayne Jenkins was arrested days later. The charges read like something from a crime novel: racketeering, conspiracy, robbery under color of law, extortion, drug distribution, overtime fraud. The indictment ran to dozens of pages and laid out years of crimes in precise, documented detail. The Baltimore Police Department held a press conference and expressed shock. The federal prosecutor's office was less theatrical. They had the recordings, they had the timesheets, they had cooperating witnesses, and they had officers who, the moment the handcuffs went on, started talking. One by one, the crew folded. Momodu Gondo was the first to plead guilty. Then Jamel Rayam, Evodio Hendricks, Maurice Ward, and Ryan Gwynn, all cooperating, all agreeing to testify against their former sergeant. In their cooperation agreements, they described everything: the robberies, the planted evidence, the overtime fraud, the chain of command. All of them pointed up. Wayne Jenkins. In July of 2018, after watching his crew flip and knowing the recordings existed, Jenkins entered the federal courthouse in Baltimore and pleaded guilty to racketeering and robbery. He did not admit to the murder. He stood before a judge and acknowledged what he had done to the city he claimed to serve. He was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole. Two members of the crew refused to plead. Daniel Herschel and Marcus Taylor exercised their right to trial. It was not a close contest. Their former partners walked to the witness stand and described in granular detail what they had done together. Body camera footage. That 30-second buffer footage the department didn't even know existed showed officers placing evidence near suspects before, quote-unquote, discovering it. The jury deliberated and came back with guilty verdicts on all counts. Herschel received 18 years. Taylor received 18 years. Every single member of the Gun Trace Task Force, all 8, was convicted of federal crimes. Not a single one beat the charges. The aftermath of the Gun Trace Task Force convictions rippled through Baltimore for years. The city government agreed to pay more than $12 million to settle civil rights lawsuits from people who had been robbed, brutalized, or wrongfully imprisoned by the crew. More than 2,000 criminal cases connected to these officers were reviewed. Hundreds of convictions were vacated. Men who had gone to prison for years because of planted BB guns, fabricated police reports, and manufactured drug charges. They walked out of correctional facilities and back into their lives with no real recourse, no apology, and no guarantee it hadn't happened in other units, with other officers, in other cities. The GTTF was exposed. The question that haunted Baltimore was, how many more were never caught? In 2022, HBO brought the story to a national audience. We Own This City, adapted from Baltimore Sun crime reporter Justin Fenton's book of the same name, dramatized the entire GTTF scandal across 6 episodes. John Bernthal played Wayne Jenkins in a performance that captured everything: the charisma, the violence, the institutional protections that allowed a man like Jenkins to thrive for years inside a broken department. The show was unflinching. It didn't just focus on Jenkins and his crew. It asked harder questions about the department that built them, the city that funded them, and the federal consent decree that came too late. It remains one of the most clear-eyed portraits of systemic police corruption ever put on screen. Wayne Jenkins will be in federal prison until at least 2038. The men he led, the ones who cooperated, have served their sentences and returned to lives outside the department. The city of Baltimore has paid out millions, reviewed thousands of cases, and continued to struggle with a police department that the Department of Justice placed under a consent decree in 2017. The Gun Trace Task Force was 8 people, but the story has never really been about 8 people. It's about what happens when accountability disappears completely, when a department measures success in gun seizures instead of justice, when an entire city is so desperate for order that it looks away from the truth. The people of Baltimore's West Side knew what was happening. They said so for years. Nobody listened. In Baltimore, the badge was the weapon, and for a long time, it worked.